This is Doug Green, and I'm the publisher of TR Publications, and this is a special podcast on behalf of TR Publications and the Cloud Communications Alliance. We have with us today Jason Thals of BroadSource. Jason, thank you for joining me today.
Thanks for having me, Doug.
Well, I think this is going to be a very interesting topic for a lot of our listeners. I think we're going to be talking about something many people may have even wondered about. BroadSource has recently launched an advertising campaign promoting secure payments. We're going to be talking about that and some other issues, including, the need to lock down or do something with sensitive information that might be at an agent's screen in a remote location. But Jason, first, what is BroadSource?
So we're a leading software development engineering firm centered around unified communications as a service and also contact center as a service, Doug. So we've been building phone systems for telecommunications carriers for the past 30 or so years to offer to businesses. And we also build the cloud contact center assets that telcos can offer to businesses as well. We also then extend those services into the premises. So the reason this topic is particularly relevant to us is because we're responsible for a lot of the cloud-based service provision, but also connecting it to enterprise clients. And this topic relating to securing credit card information and personally identifiable information is very specifically related to that carrier enterprise relationship, and we'll get into that in a bit during this discussion.
So, as we were just discussing before we turned the microphone on, now more than ever, there's so much more risk involved, it seems to me, that, a lot of companies had contact centers, call centers, and so on, agents working in a secure environment on-prem with people watching and many other measures taken. Now, of course, a lot of this work or almost all of this work is being done out of homes and apartments. So how likely is a breach?
I think that it's interesting in relative terms, right? I like to think of the analogy of getting struck by lightning is like 1 in a million. And in sort of your geography and our geography, marrying a millionaire is probably 1 in 20. But getting a data breach, being directly impacted by a data breach, is 1 in 4. And that was pre-COVID, before people started heading from home to working from home in earnest in large numbers. And we think that the potential for breach there's greater exposure, and that potentially goes up over the 2021, 2022 period as businesses find a new way of operating. A lot of people have sort of rushed home or, working from home in direct response to COVID-19. And that's been fine during the emergency situation. But now with the new normal, with people working from home, when you need a lot more permanent solutions. And although we've been delivering solutions for contact centers, securing credit card payments for several years, and we have a number of production implementations, the whole sort of requirement has been sort of enhanced by COVID-19 and so many more people working from home, and dramatically increasing the exposure, the risk of payments and securing information.
Now, did I understand you correctly? You're saying 25% chance of being breached, and that was before the curtain fell on COVID.
Yes, and so now with a lot more people working at home and a lot more private information and credit card information being exposed in the homes of workers, we expect that frequency is likely to increase.
Now, does this issue vary by where you are by geography?
Yeah, it does. I think that, sort of hackers or people interested in getting credit card numbers in large volumes, for example, are really targeting, places like North America, specifically the US, and then moving into, the higher socioeconomic sort of countries in Asia. So Australia is a very big target, and increasingly, it's why it's a very hot topic for us in our hometown in Australia, is because the sort of the cyber attacks are coming down under a lot more frequently, and a lot larger attacks. So we're seeing a lot more activity in our region, but yeah, North America and Western Europe are particular hotspots.
Well, Jason, I think we've all read that governments around the world, probably the government where any listener is listening right now, has taken some regulatory steps to put in some protections. Are these actually enforced?
Yeah, so PCI-DSS, when it first came in, was largely a voluntary introduction, and then progressively over the past few years, governments have enforced it, and now there's formal compliance requirements and penalties for breaches. So we're seeing a lot of the card issuers enforcing fines on merchants. So a bank, for want of a better term, might be issuing a compliance requirement notification on a business who's referred to as a merchant, and requiring them to demonstrate that they're protecting credit card-based payments for their customers by a certain date. So previously it would be a voluntary thing, particularly for merchants processing less than 1 million or so credit card transactions a year. But now the card issuers are targeting merchants that are processing north of 1.5 million transactions a year, and sort of enforcing a compliance date on them. Otherwise, people like Visa and MasterCard, not allowing those merchants to take payments on their card systems, just because the merchant, the card issuer, inherits the risk.
So does PCI-DSS compliance apply to all businesses equally?
It does apply to all businesses, but the more transactions you process from credit cards, the more stringent, the more rigorous your compliance, your ability to demonstrate compliance. So if you're processing, tens of thousands of credit card transactions a year, then your method of compliance is a little bit more flexible, and the rigor in demonstrating your compliance there's few more tolerances on it. But once you get up over 1.5 million, sort of 1 million plus transactions a year, and certainly once you're over 6 million transactions a year, once you're in a level 1, a tier 1 merchant, the measures and the assessments from a QSA are rigorous, and the risks of non-compliance, aside from the penalties, are very significant, both from a sort of government regulatory perspective, but also in terms of business impact, loss of reputation, and loss of income, et cetera, associated with a breach.
So what are the consequences of non-compliance?
I think, we're certainly observing, loss of earnings. So cost of a data breach in Australia in last year was around $3.35 million for a breach, which was up 10% on the year before. And that was what I was mentioning earlier about the fact that, the frequency of attacks is increasing for us in Australia, and that's what's heightened our focus on delivering solutions to clients in Australia. And more than half of those breaches were malicious attacks, and other breaches are related to system glitches and human error. but it translates to $163 per lost or stolen record. So the first is the financial impact associated with a breach, but on top of that, you've also got reputational damage and just the trust that a consumer has with a business when they're providing their personally identifiable information and credit card information to that business. There's a trust associated with making that payment, and if you break that trust, then there's plenty of options for consumers to shop elsewhere where they have a high level of trust that their transaction won't be intercepted.
So, what are the solutions that BroadSource offers to assist the business community to comply?
So we work with telcos, as I mentioned in the introduction, Doug, to protect credit card payments in the carrier cloud before they hit the merchant, before they hit the enterprise. So there's some pretty specific definitions around where information is processed and handled, and once it hits the enterprise, the different sort of measures and rigor applies to it than when it's sitting in the carrier network. So we're able to process and protect information in the carrier carrier side of the boundary, and so that's why we will be working with CCA members to introduce credit card clamping technologies in the cloud, so that when you are then delivering the phone call to your enterprise client or to a merchant, it's already a clean part of the transaction. So we've got what we call the carrier side of the transaction is the dirty leg of the call, and then we have a clean leg of the call, which is delivered to the enterprise or delivered to the merchant. So our work is when a call is being presented to a business or being presented to a merchant, we intercept that call. And when the agent is then interacting with the customer and decide to make a payment, they have a utility at the agent end, which on the agent desktop, which tells the carrier cloud to clamp that they're about to receive credit card information and to start clamping the touch tone entries. So it basically allows a call center agent to have a very natural conversation with the customer, and instead of saying, "Can I have your credit card number, please?" the agent says, "When you're ready, just enter your credit card number into the keypad of your phone." So their conversation is still very natural. The customer can then enter the keypad, enter their details, their expiry date, their security verification code, into the keypad of their phone, and the agent sees masked PAN details coming up on their screen. They don't see actually any credit card numbers themselves or any other details. And so therefore, if you're running a recording system at the agent desktop, you don't need to pause recording. During that, the recording can proceed uninterrupted. And the agent doesn't hear any tones coming in either with the credit card information, because obviously if you listen to tones being presented day in, day out, receiving credit card information, you can start to distinguish the tones by ear. But we obfuscate the tones. We make them into monotones that are delivered to the agent, so the agent can still hear beep, 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 but they don't hear the full range of tonality of DTMF coming in. And so in that sense, we handle all of the card information in the cloud and only a clean leg delivered to the enterprise, no matter where that agent resides. So the agent is in the building, in a call center building, or if they're at home, they're not receiving any card information at their end, and therefore we've reduced the risk of a breach from an end user by over 90%, reduce the risk of a breach for the merchant or the enterprise by over 90%.
And so, Jason, with regard to this, are there processes for disabled people?
Yeah, so Doug, we can still support processing of transactions that may be operator facilitated through, say, a disability service, where as long as we're intercepting the call, and that may be processed through a TTY type service, or similarly keypads on phones, as long as we're intercepting the call on the way through, then we can still clamp and still protect that transaction back up in the carrier cloud.
So, Jason, have things changed through COVID?
Yeah, dramatically, Doug. The key is that I guess that the contact center industry in particular has been interested in having agents working from home for a long time. It's always had the issues of contact center agents potentially not having a dedicated room for work, a lockable room for work. Aside from the physical hazards of working from home, there's always been the challenge of protection of information in a distributed workplace. And so that's always been a challenge. COVID has forced us to protect those environments and address those challenges. And as I mentioned before, we have been delivering DTMF clamping, credit card protection solutions for the last 3 years or so, but it's really accelerated and amplified through COVID, because businesses understand that their traditional start-stop recording and paperless workplace solutions that were suitable when everybody was working in a big call center building, hence the term call center, that now the workforce is distributed, that they require different solutions. And so the solutions that we're providing, that we're talking about here today in terms of carrier cloud-based clamping solutions, are now more popular and required than ever. And so we're in the process of delivering solutions to COVID-impacted businesses.
So, Jason, where can I learn more about this? Is there a way for me to discuss this with your team or see how this works?
Yeah, so Doug, you can visit us online at broadsource.com.au and navigate your way through to our contact center solutions part of the site and book an appointment to have a chat with me, one of our team members, one of our consultants, and talk through your specific needs. And as I mentioned, we've got a breadth of skills around carrier class interactions as well as the contact center operation. And we'll find the right person to have the right conversation with you.
Now, it sounds like this should be of specific interest to the Cloud Communications Alliance members.
Absolutely. And as I said, I think any CCA member should have a DTMF clamping, a PCI-DSS compliant option to sort of enhance their SIP trunking offerings. And so the DTMF clamp in the cloud is the first critical component, where BroadSource ties the ends together, is the agent desktop technologies that we offer that can then control those elements in the cloud.
We have a lot of managed service provider and channel partner readers. Is this something for them too?
Yeah, absolutely, because I think that as a managed service provider, you're taking on the responsibility to deliver a function to a business. And if that function includes credit cards, you want to make sure that you're able to provide the highest level of care of those transactions, because you're taking on the responsibility of them. And in some of the services we provide, where we have to take on the cybersecurity insurances, the higher grade protections you can offer as a service provider, the better your business is protected, against a potential breach of your client.
And finally, we have some enterprise listeners too, and I understand that this would be something that they might get through the carrier, but are they invited to learn more too?
Yeah, I think from an enterprise perspective, as I said, our technology brings the enterprise has control over the situation. So our technologies take things that are happening on the agent desktop to trigger things that happen in the cloud. So opening a payments page, for example, in a CRM system like Salesforce or even in Zendesk or Microsoft Dynamics or something, that is a trigger event to invoke clamping in the cloud, and then as you navigate to other pages in the process to remove the clamping so that you can continue on with other processes in your business. And they might be premises-based self-service applications that need to be navigated by touch tone. So the enterprise is in control of these services that reside in the cloud. And so we have to work at both ends of the solution, both with the carrier and with the enterprise, to make sure that these solutions are not only effective, but they're natural for both the agent and the customer they're interacting with.
Well, Jason, I want to thank you for joining me today and giving us an overview of, I think, a huge topic and something I think now people are coming around to understanding they need to work on. I'm looking forward to doing this in the future, learning more about how this is rolling out. But for now, thanks very much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me, Doug, and it's great to talk to you.